Favorite candies from the 90s. Go.
What? I don't know what candies came out in the 90s.
All right, remember the candies that we had in the 90s?
Like Razzles?
Sure. Fun Dips, Baby Bottle Pops, things like that.
Yuck.
Ring Pops.
I don't. It's hard to answer that now.
Nerds Rope.
Ew.
Okay, so I guess that's just a no on 90s candies. We tried, but we ultimately failed, and that's why those are 90s candies.
You know what? I don't know if this came out in the 90s.
Push Pops.
But these might be before the 90s. But do you remember bottle caps?
Yeah, I remember bottle caps. Those were
the
like,
root beer ones. Oh, phenomenal.
That was the first time I'd ever even had root beer flavor. Was in the form of a bottle cap.
You weirdo.
Because I didn't know. I ate them thinking that they were like fruit candy, fruit based candy, like I was eating Runts or something because I was getting
Runts are gross.
Well, yeah, that's a different conversation, but there would be like the cherry one or the orange one, and then I'd get the root beer one. And I was like, what is this? But then when I actually had root beer for the first time, I was like, oh,
you're such a strange man.
I was like a 7-year-old child.
Like the order in which you have tried foods is like you surprise me every time. You're like, The first time I ate this was when I was 25. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Famously, the first time I really ate a cheeseburger was when I was 18. So.
Strange.
Yeah. That's a story for another day. Well, I think we have determined that Bottle Caps is the reigning champion of 90s candies. You heard it here first, folks.
It probably came out before the 90s. Like, honestly, like, all these candies have been around for forever, you know?
Yeah.
So.
True. But I feel like Baby Bottle Pops, that was truly a staple of the 90s, you know? Or at least the early 2000s.
I didn't like anything that had a powder.
Yeah, I did. Like those?
Yuck.
Quite a bit.
You were probably I was just gonna say you were probably a pixie stick guy. Yuck. Disgusting.
In hindsight, pixie sticks were a little gross, especially when you broke open the pixie stick, but like you put your mouth on it, so then
and the paper's all wet.
The paper got all wet, and then it was like, oh, I can't get the powder out because the paper's all wet. We all had that issue. That was bad user experience.
Well, they had the giant ones
that
were
giant
plastic and plastic tubes.
Yeah, you get to go take some scissors to those things, but that's just a tube of sugar and like other artificial ingredients. It's just not.
That's good. What all the powders were. Fun Dip, I would just eat the stick and I would throw away the powder.
Fun Dip, oh,
which is kind of gross
too.
Wait,
you'd eat the stick?
I would eat the stick.
Okay, that's weird.
That is kind of weird, but. I did not like anything that was a powder. I was like, this is disgusting.
I mean, there was always that one kid who was like ripping open the Fun Dip and just funneling the powder into their mouth in like one hit, right? Like, oh, yeah. Good times. So to be a kid in the 90s again.
The thought of all that candy gives me a headache. Like thinking back on it, I'm like, ew.
Do you remember Push Pops?
Yeah.
So that's another example of, I think, poor user experience because you would push it up.
Yeah, and you'd get
your whole finger on it. Yeah, you get your finger all slobbery.
It would get stuck too.
Yeah.
Because you're like the wetness you made it and then it would go down.
Yeah, and it would get
and then it would get stuck.
Yeah. And then that was just like those in Jolly Ranchers, like it's just easiest candies to choke on.
Yeah, I almost died choking on a Jolly Rancher. Like, actually, I'm not even, like, exaggerating. I literally almost died. Someone had to do the Heimlich.
So if you get a bunch of candy now, what's your go-to?
I am a gummy person. I do love gummy bears, gummy worms. I guess that's about it. But I don't get, like, those are, like, I get those very rarely because they will give me a headache, and I can only eat so many now. I'm trying to think of like I don't know, probably like a Snickers. It's like a good like a chocolate, which I don't even like chocolate, but as long as it has nuts in it, then I'm good.
Yeah, I would say Snickers is probably the most well-rounded choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something about nuts needing to be in there that just turns it suddenly. It's like it's semi-okay as an adult to eat.
Yeah, because milk chocolate is way too sweet for me. If I'm gonna just eat chocolate, it has to be dark chocolate. Like the more bitter, the better.
Yeah.
But
all right.
Yeah.
So I think we've determined Bottle caps is the greatest 90s candy. Unlikely contender, but here it is. And let's see. Push Pops had some of the worst user experience, and paper tube pixie sticks had the worst user experience.
No, they do not compare to those. What were those little buttons that were on paper that you would like take it off the paper, but the paper was always without a doubt stuck to it, so you're just eating
paper because of that. Okay, yes,
that's the worst user experience.
Worst user experience. I think you call those like snow caps, or no,
they were candy buttons.
Candy buttons. Thank you. Thank you. Snow caps are a different thing.
Yeah, that's chocolate with a little
bit of a like
white stuff on
balls on it. Those actually, I love those. Ew. Snow caps are great. But yes, and Snickers is the greatest, most well-rounded candy. Sound off.
Snickers or Kit Kats?
Oh, Kit Kats are also a good choice, but I'm gonna have to give it to Snickers.
That's fair. More flavor.
Well, this was supposed to be a cold open, but it turned into a whole minute-long thing. So, let's just keep it going. What that was maybe even longer than a minute. I don't even know.
It doesn't matter.
It was fast. But welcome back to the Content Swap Podcast. You are joined by Parker and
Aaliyah.
I was gonna do that a little bit different. I got it. Let's do it over. Let's do it again. Welcome back to the Content Swap Podcast. You are joined by Parker and Aaliyah.
You started that, and I was like, "What is he actually doing?"
We went and saw Dune on
I have to do my Austin Butler Elvis voice.
Okay, hit it.
It's Aaliyah.
It's Aaliyah.
It's Aaliyah.
Yeah. Okay. So we went and saw Dune Part 2 on Friday, so we'll talk about that in a second. But if you are new to the Content Swap Podcast, this is a podcast in which apparently we just talk about whatever we want. But really what it is that we assign each other a piece of content and we engage with it for the week, and then we reconvene on the podcast and we talk about that, as well as kind of just whatever random stuff we kind of wanted to talk about that week. Mostly just like updates on things that we're watching, or maybe just substantial life events that are worth mentioning. So yeah, we try to get that stuff out of the way first, and then we go into the content. So take it away. Like, what is going on in your world in this past week?
Yeah. Same old in terms of what's going on in my personal life. But in terms of things that I've engaged with, there's 3 kind of main things that I wanted to bring up. The first being that I watched the movie Marcel the Shell for the first time, and I absolutely loved it. I was having like just a really rough, stressful day. My head was throbbing. I've been having migraines for like every day for the past week, which I finally broke the cycle like the past few days. And so my head was throbbing. I was tired, and I just crawled into bed and saw that it was on Netflix, turned it on, and it literally soothed my soul.
Wow.
Like, it made me feel instantly better.
All right, you gotta tell us what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're not familiar with Marcel the Shell, which in the movie I learned that Marcel the Shell was like a YouTube video thing, but basically it's like
that's how I know Marcel the Shell.
It's this little seashell that's like I don't know if you'd say stop motion. What is it? Stop motion? It's not stop motion.
I think it's stop motion, yeah.
Okay, I guess stop motion, but it's just this little seashell that like lives life. And the movie was just such a good movie. It was like actually pretty deep for what I thought it was gonna be, but just like so sweet by the end of it. And I just was rejuvenated and was like, it was a rough day, but I feel okay. It was great. Some other things I engaged with. So I watched, honestly, in 2 or 3 days, I started and finished the show one day, which you had brought up. I think last episode or something like that. You thought I was talking about it.
You were watching.
I watched a movie called Plus One, and you were like, is that what everyone's talking about?
You're watching all the One movies.
Yes, this is a show, a limited series, 14 episodes, which is quite long. It could have been a bit shorter. However, it was a really good show. I went into it thinking it was going to be this like cheesy, happy-go-lucky kind of rom-com. It's a bit different than that. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it ended up being wild. Just wild. And
I've heard it's long but also heartbreaking. That's my impression.
Yeah, I mean, I came out to you sobbing.
Yeah, when you finished it, you were like, sobbing. Just like I was in the middle of something and
I just like collapsed in your arms and was like, I'm not okay.
Fell apart into a million pieces. It was actually like I've never seen you do that before.
I think I just needed a good cry anyways. And so that was just like, what do you say? The
straw that broke the camel's back?
Exactly. Yeah. So great. Highly recommend highly recommend it. And then the last thing I'll say is that I started playing Sims 4. And I'm having
always fun.
I'm having such a blast. I basically am trying to create our future in Sims 4. And it's very stressful. I'm like, raising a child in this video game is actually exhausting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is a game. And I am like saving the game, closing it out and being like, I'm so tired from taking care of our child. Like I'm like truly exhausted. So I'm like, oh, what do I have to look forward to in real life? My goodness. But
wow,
having a great time.
I mean, kind of welcome to my life, just video games. You're thinking about your characters and the stories and what's going to go on with that, and you're controlling them. You got such agency and autonomy over what's going to happen to these characters, and then you got to go back to real life. Like,
wow.
I am just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, The Sims is addicting. I mean, I have memories of playing The Sims when I was a kid where like, this is kind of don't do this and don't let your kids do this, but I have a memory of like a day where I started my day playing The Sims on my brother's computer in his room, and that lasted until 6 p.m. Like I didn't eat or anything. I just played The Sims all day until 6 p.m. And time just flew by, and I was having a blast.
Yeah.
But anyway, don't let your kid do that. But good memory.
And I mean, it is crazy how you get sucked into it. Like the other night, I think after I finished work, I started playing, or I got home from school or something like that. And that was probably around like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And you came in the room because you were also playing a game that you've been very invested in. And it was like midnight and you were like, you're still up? I was yeah, I am. I'm playing The Sims.
Yeah.
But yeah, so fun stuff. Anyway, what's up with you?
What is up with me? So I finally finished Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Crown on the Nintendo Switch family of systems. Now, the new Prince of Persia game was a lot of fun. I finally finished it. I kind of was recognizing like, okay, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was coming out on Thursday, and I was still knee deep in Prince of Persia, and I barely even dipped my toe into Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. But those were like the two games that I'm like in the middle of right now. Granted, Like a Dragon I've played like over 20 hours, but it's just such a big, massive game. So I was kind of like, all right, I'm not going to finish Like a Dragon in time for Final Fantasy. There's absolutely no way, but I don't want to have 3 games going on. So I am going to do my best to finish Prince of Persia, and I think that's what I was playing the night I came in here and saw that you were still awake. But I finished Prince of Persia, and I gotta say, it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. It really is a well put together game. I only completed like 78% of it, so if I ever wanted to go back to it, there's still like 22% more stuff, I guess, to find in the game. And I felt like I did a really, really good job of covering most of everything that I came across. So it was just really consistently fun to play, and if they make more of them, I will gladly play that.
I mean, and just you let me play a little bit of it, just kind of like mess around in it, because I was like, oh, that looks kind of cool. And from just like what I played, it seemed really fun because like you have to be very strategic in how you move and like maneuver around. And I think games like that are really fun. It kind of reminds me of like games like It Takes Two and things like that, where it's like, okay, I need to get from point A to point B, but how do I do this?
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on in that game. Like you have to be very in tune with all of the different systems, and then sometimes you'll be given puzzles where it's like you need to get from point A to point B, and to do that is going to require a lot of repetition. It's like a dance that you're practicing. And it gets very exact at points, but never impossible. Like it never felt like I'm going to give up on this because it's too hard. I always felt like I was in control of my own mistakes, and that is the markings of a great game. So I really, really, really enjoyed it. I am happy to be done with it though, to be moving on, because I was getting a little stressed of just like, oh man, too many games. But I was trying to avoid having 3 active games, but then what did I go and do? Well, I did start Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'll talk about that in a second because that's the bulk of what I want to talk about. But I picked up this game on my Switch after I beat Prince of Persia, called Balatro, which I only heard about this game because I think one of the websites that I read up on daily gaming news on, I think they did a review for it and they gave it like a perfect score, and I was like, what the heck? What is this? Balatro. This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. And then 2 different podcasts that I listened to, both this week, were like, guys, I've been playing Balatro, and it's crazy. You got to play it. It's my new addiction. I played it for like hours and hours and hours, and I was like, what is this game? So like without even really looking at it at all, I was like, this is enough of a recommendation, and it's $15 on the Switch. Like, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to check it out, and I'm going to see what it's all about. And I got to say, this game is like the perfect thing to play if you have time to kill. Especially with it being on the Switch. If it was on a phone, it would be like actually too dangerous. It would be like all productivity would go out the window because you have your phone on you at all times. But with it being on the Switch, it's like the perfect thing to play on an airplane. Like, this weekend we're going out of town. I'm like, I can't wait to be on an airplane so I could have some me and Balatro time. But what it is essentially it's like a so it's a roguelike game, and that means a lot of things. It's like every single time you play it, you are kind of starting from scratch, but every single time you play it, it's different. So there are different things going on, and you're trying to progress, and each run through is going to be like at different key moments. You're going to have different kind of like modifiers available to you and things like that. So that's ultimately what I mean when I say roguelike game. But what the core of what it is that you're given like 8 playing cards, and you have to build these like poker hands. And it's like you have a certain number of times that you can play your cards to reach a certain score, or you can like discard your cards. And so like that's kind of like a cool, just fun thing to do as like a poker related game. And when I say poker, I really just mean like you're building up a full house, or you're building up like a straight or a straight flush or a royal flush, or a flush. And like each round that you complete, you're picking up these like joker cards that are these crazy modifiers that are going to like add multipliers to your score based on very specific conditions, but they all kind of like make sense. And with the fact that you can add on more of these different joker cards, it like suddenly just it's like all these different systems interacting at once to create like very specific strategies for yourself that are going to like benefit you. But it's like every single time you do it, it's like different combinations, and every single time it's like it's meaningful. Like you're able to kind of choose yourself. Like here, this is exactly how I'm going to strategize based on just how things are going on this specific run. And like with all of that interactability between all of the different systems. It's just like that's what kind of keeps you going back. It's the fact that it's so well designed that all of these things that are so different that are kind of like blending together to have like very specific effects, and you're able to kind of just keep track of them every single time, and you're building up hands, and it's just, and the effects and like the sound effects are just really well done. It's got that perfect, you know, serotonin hit when you do something good. So anyway, it's a really hard game to explain, so that's probably the last time I will plan to bring it up, but it's a little complex. But it's really, really, really good. It's available on like every single system, so I highly recommend checking it out if that sounds at all appealing to you. But okay, what I did want to talk about was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth came out. I guess I won't spend too much time on this, but basically it's the second part of the Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy of the original game, and I absolutely loved the first in this trilogy when it came out in 2020. And I have been playing it came out on Thursday, we're recording on Sunday, and I think I've already played like 12 hours of it, which is surprisingly a lot of time. And it's everything that I wanted. It's just so good. If you're interested in Final Fantasy, or if you just like video games that are, you know, big bulky RPGs, I really don't think that there is a better option out there right now. This is probably the most ambitious RPG ever put together, and it's also like an open world game, but not like overwhelmingly open world, and it's just got all of the charm of the series that you love. And I'm having a spiritual moment with it right now. So that's all I will say on that. Last thing, we saw Dune Part 2. What did you think?
I surprisingly really enjoyed it. I did not love the first one. I thought it was so boring. I didn't go to the theaters to see the first one. But as soon as it was on HBO, I was like, oh, Dune, I want to watch it. It could not like grasp my attention. I was just like, I'm so confused. There's so many names of the houses and the people and all these things, and I'm having a hard time following it. And so I just hated it. But I watched a little recap so that I, like, going into the second one, I could at least follow the baseline story. And then, yeah, the second one, although still very, very long, and like you feel it, you feel how long it is. I was a little bit more captivated and a little bit more interested, and yeah, I don't know, I enjoyed it, so I was surprised.
Yeah, I thought it was really good too. I think a lot of what I've been hearing from people who have actually read the book is that, you know, this book was kind of considered unadaptable just because it was just way too ambitious and also just like way too vague at parts. To actually make like concrete sense out of, and these movies somehow like managed to pull it off. And yeah, I talk about, you know, Final Fantasy being one of the most ambitious RPGs ever made. This was like one of the most ambitious films ever made. Like it's so dense, and there's so much stuff going on, and it's so, yeah, it's like surprisingly coherent for how complicated it is, with like all the different key terms like the Bene Gesserit and the Lisan al-Gaibs and all of that. So yeah, it's great, and it's also just incredibly beautiful. And it's not just beautiful in the, like, oh yeah, the sand, like the visual effects as we were watching it. I just, every single time we were looking at something, I was like, that looks real. Like that looks like it's being shot in camera, but obviously it's not, because that thing doesn't exist. But you can usually tell from visual effects, like, yeah, that looks a little cartoony, you know? Oh, that big dragon at the end of Shang-Chi, like, well, yeah, that was just a big CGI fest, you know? This looked like real. Like, everything looked to the T real, and that blew my mind.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, go check it out. It's great. I wrote a review on it on the content review guide. Go, read that if you're interested. So with all that said, I guess we should go ahead and get into this week's content. Also, the Oscars are happening next Sunday. We're talking about recording an Oscars conversation episode. We'll see if we manage it. But if we do, we'll plan to post that a little bit early in this week. So maybe on like Friday or something. Mm-hmm. So look forward to that if it happens. Yeah. But putting it out there, maybe it will. So what's up first?
You.
I am up first. Let's talk about me. So I was assigned me, and I am part. Sorry. Okay, that was a really dumb joke. I regret that. Okay, so I was assigned a little movie this week called Mid90s. This is an A24 film that was directed by Jonah Hill. Yes, that Jonah Hill. It stars Sonny Suljic, who I only know Sonny Suljic from the fact that he plays Atreus in the new God of War games, and I'm only used to seeing him like in a digital space. So to see the real actor as like a child acting was like pretty wild. I'm only used to seeing this kid in CGI. Now to see him in real life is a whole different experience. So it stars Sonny Suljic. He plays this kid named Stevie, who's a preteen youth growing up in LA in the mid-90s. And he lives at home with his older brother Ian and his mom. And Ian recently turned 18, but is still doing like dumb older brother stuff, like beating up his little brother, Stevie. And
it's like a bit more extreme than just, picking on your little brother.
Yeah, he's like
abusive.
Yeah. No, like it's bad. It's bad. So one day as an outlet, Stevie discovers skating and starts hanging out with a local group of skaters that work at his local skate shop. That's kind of how that happens. Mm-hmm. And in that group, you have Ruben, who is a fellow child. Like Stevie, I want to say Stevie's like 12, maybe 13. Mm-hmm. And Ruben also is pretty much just as young as him, maybe like 14 years old. Mm-hmm. So Ruben he's a little misguided. And then we've got another kid in the group. His name is Fourth Grade. That's just what they call him. He's a teen that doesn't really talk much, but he films almost everything. Then, wait, are we doing curse words on this? I totally forgot this kid's name.
No. His name is FS. You can put that together.
Yeah. His name is FS. Both of those are profanity. We don't like to curse on this podcast. It's not that we don't curse in real life. We just don't like to do it on the podcast. So, we're just going to refer to that kid as FS. So FS is a talented skater with awesome hair that doesn't take much of anything too seriously. And then there's Ray. Ray's like the straight shooter of the group he's trying to take skating seriously. He's trying to build it into a career. He's kind of like the pseudo leader / guardian of the group. And he's probably my favorite character in the movie. So Stevie, our main character, he's so young that he kind of worships these guys because he thinks, they're cool and he feels like seen while he's around them. Whereas, when he's at home, his brother just beats him up, and his mom is perhaps like, his mom's not around much because she's probably working to support their family. And it kind of seems like maybe she's like losing sight of what's going on with her two sons. And the movie itself is like fairly simple and mainly just kind of follows Stevie's progression in this group as he starts out as just some little kid that's hanging out with these older kids, but then starts to gain everybody else's respect. Like when Ray and FS are jumping a small gap on a roof, Stevie, and they're doing this on their skateboards, Stevie like just learned how to ollie, and he's like, I'm going to try to jump the gap on my skateboard, but he goes way too slow when he does it, and he falls down the gap and just smacks onto a picnic table, starts like bleeding out of his head, and everybody's like, whoa, like that was crazy. But they don't like run away or anything. They make sure that he's okay. And so it's through these like little acts of misguided bravery, I guess, that he kind of earns the group's respect initially, and they kind of begin to recognize, Ray especially, that they kind of need to take care of him. Like he's he's like the little baby of the group, but at the same time, like they're treating him a bit like an equal in almost like unhealthy ways, especially when they go to a party and he has an interaction with a older woman.
And by older, we mean like 16.
Yeah, like a 16-year-old girl, and he's just like, he's just too young for that. So it all kind of culminates when Stevie comes home drunk one night, and his mom takes him to the skate shop to yell at his friends. Then when he and his mom get in the car, Stevie starts cursing her out, and I mean like hard. So Ray, seeing that Stevie is kind of losing his way, has an older brotherly chat with Stevie to try and kind of give him some perspective on his life. Like Ruben's mom is always getting messed up and beating him and his sister. Fourth grade is extremely poor to where he can barely afford to buy socks. And FS, like, yeah, he's cool and he's a talented skater, but he's been a little too obsessed with getting drunk and trying to figure out, like, when's the next party happening? Where is it at? And Ray opens up about how, like, he used to have a little brother that he shared a room with that, like, got hit by a car, like, 3 years ago. So Ray's really just trying to help Stevie understand, like, they've all got something wrong in their lives. They're all hanging out with each other. They're all skating because, like, it helps them cope with the other things that they got going on. And in Stevie's case, like, at least he's got a mom that cares about him. He doesn't really directly say that, but that's kind of like the subtext of what he's trying to tell Stevie. Yeah. And after that, I mean, they have that conversation. Stevie's still kind of being a little bit of a dummy, but they're all skating and partying at the shop one day, and Ray's talking to some local pros. And, you know, Ray's trying to build those connections. He wants to go pro. And FS is a bit jealous that, you know, Ray's going a little hardcore, taking everything seriously, when FS doesn't want to take anything seriously, but they're supposed to be like best friends. So when everybody leaves the party, FS says, like, yeah, we need to go to this after party at some girl's house, and I'm driving, and but he's drunk. So when everyone
messed up.
Yeah. So when everyone gets in the car with him, they're a little apprehensive. It's tense, and I mean they do end up getting into a car crash. And Stevie is the most hurt of all of them, and he wakes up in the hospital, and his mom sees that he wakes up in the hospital, like, he's okay ultimately, but I mean he got off. Yeah, that was tough, you know. His mom sees that his friends slept at the hospital overnight to make sure that he was okay. And she kind of realizes in that moment that even though he's getting himself into some situations that he's not really old enough for, these friends that he's spending his time with do actually care about him. So she asks, like, do you guys want to see him? And Ray tells him basically, like, he tells Stevie, while Stevie's in the hospital bed, Ray tells him, like, you take the hardest hits of anybody I know, but you know you don't have to do that, right? And that's kind of this way of communicating, like, Stevie got a lot of validation from, like, doing that daring stuff, like falling on the picnic bench, and it got their attention. And, you know, like, even though he did that, and even though, like, you know, it's fun when Stevie does these things that he's maybe a little, like, not old enough for, Ray is ultimately telling him, like, you don't need to do that stuff in order for us to think that you're cool. Like, we like you because you're you, and we just, like, you are our friend. And all of that was just kind of conveyed through, like, those two simple lines. And I really liked that. I thought it was nice. So yeah, it's just kind of this moment of Stevie realizing, like, yeah, I don't need to put myself out there so much, especially not in harm's way. And, then fourth grade kind of asks, hey, do you guys want to watch something cool? And he connects his camera to the hospital TV because, you know, he keeps those cords on him. And he plays an awesome like skating / chilling montage of the friend group hanging out, and they're goofing off and they're skating, and it says like Mid90s by, you know, fourth grade, or like a fourth grade film or something like that. And then the movie ends. So nobody dies, but you know, there's a couple moments there where you're a little worried. But anyway, I really like this movie. This was a great movie. I mean, it's really simple. I felt like I was reliving the 90s, which is the point. But yeah. I know I had a way more like privileged upbringing than these characters did, and I didn't necessarily grow up in the 90s. I mean, I briefly grew up in the 90s, but like I found the messaging around like how young men influence each other and how sometimes we do things as we're developing that are misguided in an effort to earn each other's respect, to be like really well done. You know, we all kind of take different routes to cope with the concept of growing up, and it was like watching that metabolize for Stevie and Ray and their relationship especially, while also kind of being like this anthropological study of mid-90s skater culture's effect on youth, both like the positives and the negatives. So I thought it was really good.
Nice. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the movie?
No, that's everything I had written down.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I absolutely loved this movie when I first saw it. I am very interested. I feel like very interested, but I still don't know a lot about like skating culture, and that's very broad, but both like skateboarding culture, but also like roller skating culture. And so there are like a few documentaries that I've watched that I highly recommend. The first, and also like I am interested in the difference between New York skating culture versus LA skating culture, because they have very different vibes. But if you're interested in some documentaries, I highly recommend this documentary called All the Streets Are Silent, which basically kind of talks about how hip hop culture and skateboarding culture like merged around like the 80s and 90s, especially like in New York, and kind of how these like skateboarders like kind of infiltrated the hip hop world and were like a big part of it. Super cool documentary. And yeah, you got to know some of the like popular skateboarders, which like heavily reminded me of these kids that you see in this movie here. Also, another interesting documentary, if you're more so interested in like roller skating culture back in the 80s, 90s, there's a documentary called Roller Dreams, which basically showcases all of these like prominent roller skaters at Venice Beach.
Oh, I watched that with you.
Yeah, back in the 80s and /90s. And that was also a really cool thing to watch.
Yeah, and it also kind of talked about how white people kind of took over the portrayal of roller skating in mainstream media, and just kind of, you know, what's the word, appropriated it.
For sure. I think that's what draws me into like wanting to learn more about the history of skating, is because it feels so connected to like the social issues at the time. Like, your prominent skaters, I feel like a lot of time have come from like places that are impoverished and things like that, and like kind of use skating as this like way to be radical in their own sort of sense, you know, and kind of go against the system in a way, through different avenues. Right. And so, like, yeah, it's really cool to learn about that.
Like when skaters get kicked out of places, it's so that they don't vandalize the property. Mm-hmm. And the vandalism that's happening is like their board ultimately like skidding across things when they do grinds and stuff like that. I apologize for my alarm again. So like, but it's kind of like when people bust up skaters, like groups of skaters, how much damage are they really doing, I guess. I mean, it's public property. It belongs to the city. I get it. But it's been cool to watch over the years how cities have grown to like support their local skating culture a bit more, like you know, having developments of like building skate parks and things like that. So yeah, I mean, skateboarding specifically, it's really cool. I read I did my third grade biography book report on Tony Hawk, and you learn about, you know, like he grew up in San Diego, and so like yeah, there was like a very specific skating scene going on down there, and like there was just like these crews that they hung out with. I forget the name of like what his group was, but it was just like this whole generation of skaters that like all hung out together, and then like all kind of became big in their own way. So yeah, it's really cool. And then like, you know, we all love Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk's the coolest. And then made a bunch of cool games as well. So
yeah, I mean, that's like the wonderful thing about skate culture is like it's such a community, and people from all different backgrounds can be a part of it, and it's such a welcoming and like liberating space. And like some of the things that I love, like so in the summer when like the pandemic happened, I took up roller skating and got really interested in just like finding my own little like roller skating communities wherever I was. And like I went to Venice Beach, and I like roller skated with a group of like queer roller skaters and like just people of color who roller skate at Venice Beach, and that was a ton of fun. And then like being where we are here, where there's been like a skate kind of community that has come together. And like you said, there's people of all generations, and it's so fun to like see these like older men who have been skating since like forever, like way back in the day, and they're teaching you these dance moves, and it's just like, this is so much fun. Like it's such a great space to be a part of. So I don't know. This movie just like reminds me of that. Yeah.
I don't mean to sound pretentious, but they are two very distinct, I'd say, cultures. But what do you mean? Skating, like roller skating.
Well, yeah, roller skating and skateboarding
and then, like,
is very different.
Are very different. Yeah.
No, for sure. But like the underlying thing behind it, is
the
still community.
Yeah. So I wasn't trying to sound some type of way.
You weren't even a part of either. I just wanted
to point it out.
No, I'm kidding.
I mean, it's interesting because like, yeah, I didn't learn how to skateboard until like 2015. And I haven't skated since like 2017. But like, I kind of wish I had a skateboard to skate around. I only ever want a skateboard when I live in an area that's flat. And the area we live in right now, it's pretty flat. But I don't think it would be a good look for like a 30-year-old man to be skating in the streets. I don't know. It just seems weird. I'm not in California anymore.
It doesn't matter. I've been out there in my roller skates, and like adults stop and they're like, "Oh, I've been wanting to roller skate." Like that looks like fun.
I'm talking about like, I'm not talking about like practicing tricks in the parking lot, which is like its own thing. But like that's more so what you're doing. I'm talking about like just skating through town.
I have seen older men skating
on skateboards. In our neighborhood.
I think so.
All right, we'll point them out next time you see one. Well, but skating is kind of just, it's always been there though. Like even though I didn't grow up skating, it was like the fact that they made all of those Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, like introduced skating to so many people and introduced like that specific culture to like the gaming medium as well. And it was like providing this opportunity for these professional skateboarders to be like digitized and like add their own like unique personality and community to like the gaming industry specifically. Like they would create like whole stories that involved like Bam Margera and Tony Hawk facing off. I think that was like Tony Hawk's Underground 2. But like I learned so much about skating from playing every single one of those Tony Hawk games over the years. And like I could name you all these different skateboarding tricks. I can name you all these different like professional skateboarders from back then. And it's been really interesting to see that kind of like fade away, because now I don't know anything about professional skateboarders because we don't get video games based on them anymore. But it was really cool seeing like Ryan Sheckler, who was like the youngest professional skateboarder ever at the time. He was like a 16-year-old kid. Well, he's in the new Tony Hawk game, and it's like this 16-year-old kid that like got really good at skating. He's given this opportunity to then like be in this game that's gonna like last forever. So it's just like those kinds of opportunities that kind of just like built up over time from skating specifically, especially in like the 2000s.
Yeah. Were the pro
really cool.
skaters back then like diverse?
I mean, there's a lot of white ones, but sorry, the way I said that. I mean, there's a lot of white skaters, but like I could name, there's Tony Hawk, Bam Margera, Bob Burnquist, Rodney Mullen, but then you got like
Rob.
Who's Rob?
Rob and Big. Rob, what's his last name?
Oh, Rob.
Dyrdek or something like that.
Rob Dyrdek. Yeah. Daewon Song. He was not white.
So one person.
Yeah. There was a black guy that you could use
But
in
you
the
don't know his
game that you could play
name.
as. I don't know his name. Yeah.
That's
That's
concerning.
not good. Okay, but in the later Tony Hawk games, I remember you could play as Nigel Williams, and she was like a teenager and like a young black girl who was a professional skateboarder, and she had like her own kind of like distinct vibe and personality. And like, yeah, you could play as Nigel.
Yeah. I mean, that's still just one person.
I know. Well,
and I feel like skateboarding is a really big thing in communities of color.
Yeah.
But maybe doesn't get as much recognition.
That's fair. I'm not here to defend the game developers. I don't know what the process was like.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I'm just saying like there was just a very distinct amount of like skateboarding culture that did get communicated through those games. Like you'd play you'd go pro, and then it was like, oh, which of the like who do you want to sign up with? And it was like you literally got to choose from like every single skateboarding company that could sponsor you. And it would go through like the history of like, here are the skateboarders that, you know, are part of these different brands. And like, oh, do you really like Birdhouse, which is, you know, Tony Hawk's group at the time? Like, you know, you could put those like stickers, or you could have like shirts and things that had like their logos and stuff on them. So it was just like, I just really appreciated how much of the industry got conveyed in just like this one specific series of games that like just stood the test of time really well for a long time.
Gotcha.
Anyway, we're no longer talking about mid-90s.
Well, no, I think this is a really interesting conversation because, I mean, like, these kids are a diverse group of kids who have aspirations, especially Ray, of being pro. And so, like, I was just curious to know, like, because from what I've learned about, like, the skate culture is, like, the kids of color kind of create their own, like, name for themselves. It's not really through, I feel like, the avenue of being pro, like Tony Hawk, you know, it wasn't like through that they kind of made a name for themselves. And so I think it's like a really interesting conversation to have, especially like surrounding this movie and what this movie's about.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about skating is that there's just so many different types of events. Like Tony Hawk became big because he was a vert skater. So he was doing like a lot of half pipe stuff. Like he did like the 900, which was like 3.5 spins or something, like, or 2.5 spins, which was considered like almost like nobody had ever done it before. It was just a concept, and like Tony Hawk pulled it off. And so like he was huge because he was like a vert skater, which kind of like was almost this way of like turning it into, you know, a big like X Games kind of sport. But then you have guys like Rodney Mullen, Rodney Mullen's not a vert guy. Rodney Mullen just like created his own tricks, and he just like so many of the tricks that skaters use today. Rodney Mullen was the inventor of like all of those, like I think it was the dark slide. He created that. But like doing manuals and things like that, or like tricking out of a manual and into another manual. Like that was Rodney Mullen's thing. And he got big from just like filming videos of him like jumping onto one picnic bench doing a manual and then kick flipping out of it over like a gap onto another picnic bench into like a no side manual. Just things like that. Like, I guess my point is that there's just so many different facets to it.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, there is the going pro, like the Tony Hawk kind of going pro, but then there's also like the Rodney Mullen going pro.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So want some fun facts about this movie?
Yeah, I do want some fun facts about this movie.
So this movie was shot entirely on 16 millimeter film, which is very apparent. It's shot very well, very cool.
It looks like it was filmed in the 90s.
Yeah. Most of the skaters in the film, including Sunny, were scouted at various skate parks across LA. And because these kids are very young, did not grow up in the 90s, Jonah Hill gave them all iPods with the movie soundtrack, and had them study like 90s skate films.
Nice.
And then the last fun fact, and then I have a few questions for you, but the last fun fact is that Nickel Smith, who plays Ray, is not only a pro skater, but was also a member of Odd Future.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yep. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I had no idea.
Yep. So, questions for you.
All right, hit me.
Is there what's the best word for this? Like a subculture that you wish you were a part of? Is that the word? Subculture that I'm looking for?
Yeah, sure.
You know? Like something that's like very niche, small community or something like that.
Well, I feel like right now I'm kind of becoming a part of one, which is the Filmstagram community, which is like all the people on Instagram who talk about movies. Because I've been doing this content review guide stuff a lot more recently, I've been trying to engage with other people who post reviews of content on Instagram. And what I'm finding is that like you've got your bookstagrammers, and then you've got your filmstagrammers, and then you've got the people who maybe do like film and television, and there's not a lot of like gamestagrammers. It's mostly, you get into like streaming and stuff like that. There's not really like a lot of people reviewing games on Instagram from what I've found, like in the way that like filmstagrammers do it. Game reviews are mostly just being left to the large outlets like the IGNs and the GameSpots and the Game Informers to post those. But so I've been engaging a lot with the Filmstagram community because there's so many people. And I think film is also just like this thing that, we do it on this podcast. Like it's it's easy to consume it. It's a 2-hour thing and like that's it. It's the shortest form of media of all of these things. So I've been commenting on a lot more like other people's posts and things. Anyway, I guess all of this to say like I've been engaging a lot more in that specific like sub community of the internet, and I've been really enjoying it. I'm also learning about like the ups and downs of like being part of that community and some of like the toxic behaviors that have also existed in the past in that community. And like, people might like reach out to try and like kind of leverage your network just to build their network and then like cut you loose. Like I just heard of different stories of things like that happening, and it's really upsetting. I mean, one person that I follow posted on their story like they were too afraid to post their review for I think it was like Dune, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest, because they gave each of those things 3 stars out of 5, and they were like, I'm too afraid to post my opinion on this over what people will think. And I responded to that and I said, don't let what other people think stop you, because like at the end of the day it is your opinion. It's not that serious. And then they're like, thank you, like I really appreciate that. And then they posted another post that like after they posted that story about getting 3 stars, or that they wanted to give those things 3 stars but they were too afraid to post their reviews on them, they said that like some people were really nice in their DMs and other people just like were giving them hate of like, why would you give Poor Things a 3 or why would you give Dune a 3? It's a masterpiece. What's wrong with you? And that just kind of like broke my heart. And so I'm almost like, like when I read that, then I responded to that person and I wrote this like whole rant of like, those people are not worth your energy. You do this because you enjoy doing this. Mm-hmm. Post your opinion. It is at the end of the day, like it is your opinion. It's the whole point of this is that we don't all agree. And if anybody is like giving you hate, that's just like irresponsible and they're not worth your time. Like, so yeah, it's really upsetting. Anyway, so like, yeah, I'm getting deep into that community and I'm appreciating what I am finding. So I guess that would be my long answer to your short question.
No worries. Cool.
And I'm here for anybody who has an opinion. I will defend your right to your own opinion to the day I die. Yeah.
Yeah. If I were to answer this question as what subculture I wish I was a part of, I feel like similar to you. I feel like I'm very much a person that likes to dip my toes into a lot of things to just try it out.
Yeah.
But what I wish I was fully embedded into, obviously roller skating. I love roller skating so much. It's like been so fun and so wonderful to be out of the house and like doing dances and like meeting other people. But I still don't feel like I'm like deeply embedded in the like roller skating community, so there's that. But then also the pole dancing community, like I would love to like really be deep into that, and to meet other dancers and just to, like get better at it, learn from people.
You should follow some people on Instagram.
I should. I've been trying to take a break from Instagram, and so I like deleted the app. It's still like within my app settings. This week it's been a little difficult. I've been on it a little bit more than I want, but yeah, so.
Yeah, I've been on it maybe too much.
Yeah, I've been pretty good, but so yeah, so we'll see. But for now I have, the people I do classes with. That's great. Love that. I don't know, I just like really empowering spaces.
Yeah.
Last question that I have for you. If you could be a pro at anything, what would you want it to be?
Ooh. I have an answer to this, I think. I'm not sure. A pro at like anything, or just like a
like if you could have something as your professional career, like you're a pro skater, like that's you're making a living off of doing this thing.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it would be cool to. Well, I mean, it would be cool to be like, getting paid to professionally review things so I could just consume things all day and just write about it, because I mean that's what I do for fun as my hobby. I don't get paid to do that, but it'd be cool to get paid to do that.
Do you think
the alternative would be to make those things myself, like be a film director, be a a showrunner or a game designer or an author. It would be cool to do any one of those things.
Do you think I would take the fun out of it if you were getting paid?
Maybe. I mean, to a degree. There are people who I listen to, like their podcasts and stuff, and most of what they do is talk about the latest game every single week. And what that requires them to do is play something new all the time, which doesn't leave them with a ton of time to go back and finish the things that they actually really like. So that would be, and like that's just games, so that would be that's what I would be apprehensive about. So I think, yeah, to your point, like at least right now I can keep it to, just the things that I engage with, while trying to just keep like a steady cadence.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. Aside from that, it would be cool to be like a pro skater.
Yeah.
Or a chef. Chef came to mind.
Ooh. Yeah. Ugh, I would love to be a chef. I wish I enjoyed cooking.
That's a thing.
That's all I want is the baseline to enjoy cooking.
Like I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to be like a pro chef, but I also get so bored when I'm cooking. So what's up with that? You know, it's there's just like this sixth sense to people who are really good at cooking that it's like, yeah, I wish I had that sixth sense.
Well, I think it can be
like
if you know what you're doing, it could be an outlet for creativity, you know?
Yeah.
It's like art. It's art, you know? Putting these things together, seeing what it comes up with. Like, it's like art and science put together. But, yeah, no, I just don't. I mean, I'm sure if you became a pro at something, you probably enjoy it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a pro, you know? I wish I was a pro tennis player. That'd be super cool. But, yeah.
I believe that.
I really, any athletics, I wish I was a pro athlete because, like, to be in like the best physical shape ever seems so amazing. And like I want to feel what they feel because I'm just like, wow, you're just pure muscle.
Yeah.
They probably eat like 4,000 calories a day. I want to do that.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be a pro rock climber. I think there's like I enjoy watching rock climbing competitions and I enjoy challenging myself with rock climbing, but I don't really enjoy the level of pushing your physicality that rock climbing really requires to get like into the really, really difficult stuff. There's just like there's a certain threshold of rock climbing I know I'm never going to achieve, so I wouldn't want to achieve that, but I would want to be good enough at rock climbing to where I could go climb, you know, El Capitan with a friend and you know, be confident that we're not going to die or anything like that, you know.
Yeah, I'm very glad you were not a pro rock climber. I would be so scared all the time. I'd be so anxious. I'd be like,
that's fair.
What if he falls? But yeah, that's all I have.
Nice. Cool. Shall we move on?
Let's do it. I'm getting tired.
Oh, no.
I know.
We're trying to watch the holdovers after this. There's not enough time.
It's okay. No, we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Okay.
I'm not going to take very long with this.
Okay.
Okay. I was assigned the movie Hard Boiled, which came out in 1992. So this is a Hong Kong action film that follows a cop named Tequila who is trying to bust a group of arms dealers. And so Tequila and his colleagues at the station keep receiving these like coded messages from someone working among the arms dealers. And these coded messages are like helping them out. But at this point, we don't really know who's sending it. Neither do, you know, Tequila or his colleagues. So meanwhile, we're introduced to a man named Alan, and he's this like cutthroat assassin working for one of the top men running the kind of arms dealing game. And this man's name is Uncle Hoy. However, under the instruction of a leader of a rivalry gang, whose name is Johnny, Alan betrays Uncle Hoy and ends up killing him and his men. So during this kind of wild killing I'm just looking at your face. You're killing me.
I'm having a blast listening to you describe this.
Yeah.
Because you're just describing the story, which like, keep going.
So anyways, during this kind of wild killing rampage in which Alan kills Uncle Hoy and his men, Tequila infiltrates this action in hopes of taking out Alan. But when the
I think he's just trying to take
out all of them,
everyone.
But it's Alan's, you know, over here murdering a bunch of people, so you know,
sure, yeah,
need to take out Alan.
Yeah.
But when the opportunity presents itself and Alan and Tequila are face to face, Alan doesn't kill Tequila. And this kind of allows Tequila to connect the dots and be like, why didn't he kill me? Like, maybe.
Tequila tried to kill Alan, but he had no bullets left.
Yeah. So he's like, why didn't he kill me? And so then it basically leads to him realizing that Alan is the person who's been sending these coded messages and is actually an undercover cop. Shocker.
Yeah, it's not.
So now Tequila and Alan are going to work together to bring down Johnny and his men who have been smuggling weapons in the basement of a hospital, which like worst place to do that. But I guess
the point.
Most unsuspecting. Yeah. And it basically leads to this like massive brawl with many fatalities. But ultimately the cops are successful. They take down this whole operation and
they take down Johnny.
Yeah.
Johnny and his crew also blew up the hospital.
Yeah. It was wild.
Yeah.
Lots of scary moments in that scene. So that's essentially the movie. At first, I hated this movie and I did not want to be watching it because it was just like off the bat shoot, killing everybody. And I was like, I literally, like, no.
You thought this was going to be a martial arts movie because I said Hong Kong action film.
He said it had the guy from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is a martial arts movie.
Right.
And I was like, oh, another martial arts movie. Great. He was so great in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I'm here for this.
This movie is all guns.
All guns.
Yeah.
It's the worst. I hate movies that are just all guns, all shooting, aside from like John Wick. But even John Wick, they break it up. They do some like hand-to-hand combat.
That's true.
There is some martial arts in John Wick. Like, it's not just shooting.
Sure. And okay, so at first you didn't love the movie.
Yeah, at first I was like, I hate this. What am I watching? This is not what I thought it was going to be. I don't care that they're just shooting at each other. Like, terrible. It wasn't until literally we got to the hospital which is like the last big thing that kind of happens, that I was like, okay, this movie's not so bad. I am at this point invested. I think it was because there were, lots of civilians in this hospital. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, how are they going to say, because like people were just getting shot left and right. And then there was this room full of babies and that was really stressful. And I was like, are the babies going to get shot at? Like, I can't handle this. So by that point I was invested.
Right.
Did I love this movie? Absolutely not. Okay. Did I hate it? No, it was okay.
That's a win.
I gave it a 5 out of 10.
Wow. Oof. All right. This is one of my favorite movies.
I believe that.
This movie's so good. I will say, I mean, watching in 2024, it's like, dang, that's a lot of guns. But if you just forget about that,
how can you? It's all there is.
I know. But like, so this is a John Woo film, mm-hmm. and John Woo, he is all about like style and just doing it how he wants to do it. Mm-hmm. And to where like he doesn't care, like he'll throw doves in the middle of a shootout sequence just mm-hmm. to add some flair to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And like I have a lot of respect for what John Woo does in his action sequences, and that he just do whatever he wants. Mm-hmm. I'll get into it in a second, but this movie, okay, there's just like you have to pay attention to the stunt work. So like I was trying to point out earlier, like I mean, you are recounting the story, but the story is not why I watched this movie. I mean, the story makes sense, mm-hmm. but that's not why you watch Hard Boiled. Mm-hmm. You watch Hard Boiled because there are 3 consecutive big action set pieces. There's the opening scene, which takes place in a tea shop, mm-hmm. and that just has like a ton of big action and shooting and style all over it. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the part in the warehouse where like Alan kills Uncle Hoy, and then Tequila comes guns blazing, and like there are scenes, or there are moments in that sequence mm-hmm. where there are stunts happening mm-hmm. that I'm like you have to remember, all of this is being captured in camera. There's no visual effects. Like mm-hmm. all the explosions are real. All of like the people falling off of motorcycles, or like a guy like jumps off of a jump on the back of his motorcycle, like aimed at Tequila, and Tequila shoots it with a shotgun, and the motorcycle explodes in midair while this guy is on it. And it's just like, I have never seen a movie that has stunts this dangerous in it. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's absurd how mm-hmm. dangerous these stunts are. And then like and then the final sequence is the hospital, and it's like they just blow the whole thing up. So like when Chow Yun-fat, there's a sequence where he is like leaping out of like the 3rd floor or something, and he's got a baby with him, mm-hmm. and like there's a scene where he's in this hallway like running to the window with the baby in his arms. I mean, it's not a real baby when they're filming it, but there's just like a bunch of explosions and like flames just shooting out everywhere, and you can see it in the scene that like if this man does not run, he will actually catch fire. And apparently they filmed that scene twice, because the first time they filmed it, John Woo wasn't satisfied with like when they set off the explosions. It was too far away from Chow Yun-fat, so the second time they filmed it, he set it off a little bit closer to him so that he would actually be running for his life, which is a totally insane thing to do. But Chow Yun-fat was like, after they got the shot, he was very professional. Like he asked like to check to make sure like it was okay after they called cut. Like, oh, did it look okay? But then afterwards, apparently he was like, that MFer.
Yeah, I'd be like, I'm not doing that again.
Right.
So whatever you've got, you've got.
Right. But he and John Woo are buds. So like that tea house, this kind of speaks to just like how they filmed the movies. Like they shot in that tea house at the beginning of the movie. 5 days after they finished filming, that whole tea house just got like burned down, and apparently their filming was so loud that it upset the neighbors, but the police were like really big John Woo fans that they just let them unbothered every single night like do what they had to do. But a lot of it is improvised. Like in the tea house, when Chow Yun-fat, he's on a staircase, and there's like a whole bunch of people on the staircase, and they're all ducking down, and he kind of gets like pushed off, like, and he's like leaned over the railing, and he's got two guns in both hands, and he's like leaned over the railing, but then he's like sliding down the railing, like, because he's got the vantage point that he needs to take out the bad guys. And he's like pow, 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 going down the stairs, sliding along this railing. Like, that was all improvised. And it's like, on some versions of the movie, that's like the cover of the movie. So it's the fact that like so much of it was just kind of like they came up with it on the fly. They just knew like, we're having a sequence that takes place in a tea shop, and while they're filming it, they're like, what would be the coolest thing? You know, they didn't do all of this like planned out choreography or anything. They were just like, what would be the coolest thing? Just everybody that's here, like, let's put our heads together and like, let's film it. Let's make it happen. So like when Tequila at the end of that whole sequence is like covered in flour, before he like takes out the main bad guy in that scene, like they came up with that on the fly. So, let's see.
Can I just say one thing about that tea shop?
Yeah.
It was like a bring your own bird tea shop, and I thought that was really cool.
So I will talk a little bit about the birds in a second, but so like apparently the original plot of this movie, oh, okay, no. I'll go back to that. What I wanted to get at was that John Woo was quoted saying that like he thinks logic in movies is boring, and that when he's filming, he's going based on feeling, being very free and open. He said he doesn't really have any love for film theory or film language, and instead just films what he wants to film. So this movie in particular was filmed in sequence because he wanted a way to make sure that every next sequence he did was going to be bigger than the one before it. So it was like, yes, the hospital needs to be bigger than the warehouse scene, but we're going to do the warehouse scene first. So that way I know what that was. So then when we do the hospital, we actually do it better and bigger. And apparently he also wanted to bring down the whole hospital at the end of the movie, but the crew got a little worried that it would be excessive. So what ended up being in the movie was only about a fourth of the explosives that they had planned for, which is crazy because it was already a lot.
Yeah.
So apparently the original plot of this movie involved a guy poisoning baby bottles, but John Woo, but John Woo scrapped that idea and he redid the entire core essence of the film a week before they started filming it. So that's actually why the last half still takes place in a hospital, because that was part of the original plan for the movie that they were supposed to be filming. But it does make for like a pretty epic final sequence, blowing up the hospital and saving the patients and the babies, and you're mourning all of the innocent lives that are lost along the way. But they filmed the tea house sequence at the beginning of the movie before they even had a script. It was really just like, we know this is going to open with this tea house sequence, but we don't really know what the movie's going to be about yet. Apparently, Michelle Yeoh was originally supposed to play opposite of Chow Yun-fat, where Tony Leung, who is the one who plays Alan, he would have been the baby poisoning villain. But when Michelle Yeoh had to back out due to scheduling conflicts, and then that's kind of what like led to John Woo just revamping the whole thing. So she was originally supposed to be Tequila's, I guess like the character that in this like actually is Tequila's girlfriend. Like that was originally kind of supposed to be her character, but she was much more prominent, and I don't know if she was necessarily supposed to be his girlfriend, but it was just like that female presence. Kind of just like, because she backed out, it just kind of became this other woman who just kind of became like the female presence in the movie. She's barely even in the movie.
I liked her though.
Yeah. But apparently Chow Yun-fat was mourning the loss of that aspect of his character's story, because it was going to be like a bit more fleshed out with like him and Michelle Yeoh. And he was feeling like Alan's character was being given like more depth. So he asked John Woo to film. There are these scenes that happen between Chow Yun-fat and John Woo. John Woo is the director, but there are these scenes where he is like a character who is like a mentor figure to Tequila. And Chow Yun-fat came up with that himself, and they filmed all of those scenes on the last day of filming because he felt like having that mentor character would flesh out Tequila's character a little bit more, and by making the mentor John Woo himself, he was like, John Woo's not gonna cut the scenes from the final cut of the movie because then he gets to be in the movie.
Silly. I disagree. I think those scenes did nothing and could have easily been cut.
I mean, yeah, they could have, but
but if it made him feel better, then
yeah,
that's nice.
So this is notably John Woo's last film before he went to Hollywood. So he then went to he did Hard Target, he did Face Off, the John Travolta Nicolas Cage movie. That's a John Woo film. And he did Mission Impossible 2.
The worst one?
It is the worst one. Yeah. Yeah, it is the worst one, but that's fine. He did eventually come back to Hong Kong, and he filmed a 2-part epic called Red Cliff. I've only actually seen the first part, but I do remember it being awesome, so I kind of want to go back and watch Red Cliff 1 and 2. All of the dialogue in this movie is dubbed as well, so they did that so that they could save money not having to set up boom mics and other things for sound specifically, so that they could just focus on the action of the characters. I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of smart, good way to save on a budget. There's also a character in this movie. Johnny's main henchman is this guy, Mad Dog, who he's kind of like the main bad guy physical presence, I guess, for a good portion of the film, at least at the beginning part of the hospital sequence. And Mad Dog was originally not going to be in the movie, but the actor that ended up playing him was the stunt coordinator for the movie, who used to have an acting career in the 70s, and John Woo liked his acting career in the 70s. So he thought like the guy that plays Johnny wasn't enough of like a threatening person to be like the main bad guy. So he created Mad Dog to be this, it's like, hey, this former actor who's the stunt coordinator for the movie can now be in the movie because he's now like a stunt mastermind. And he could just be this more threatening presence as a character. And I just thought that was a genius idea. You could have taken Mad Dog out of the movie and still had the same movie, but it's just like him being there just became this, it's just, I thought it added to the movie. I guess this is all going back to my point of like, the story does not matter in this movie. It's just like, it's the conditions in which led to it getting made, of just like, it was a very amorphous, freeform thing that they did. Just knowing like, all right, there's going to be like, we're going to do 3 really big sequences. Now, what are the craziest ideas you got? And like, let's do them. And that's just a totally bonkers way to approach making a movie. But also like, it's just a really cool piece of history.
Yeah. I mean, I liked having Mad Dog in it. I feel like he was one of the strongest parts of the story, even though he seems very secondary as a character. Like, he kind of created that line. Like, he, like, I guess, points attention to the line of, like, how far are you willing to go to do something? And so, like, his big thing was, like, at a certain point, he's like, I am not here to kill innocent people.
Right.
I'm not supporting this. Which, like, it's kind of crazy because it's like, why'd you even get into this business anyway?
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I appreciated that little small detail of like, okay, this person's bad because now they've gone too far.
Right.
And they don't care about the babies. They don't care about, all these innocent people that are like at the hospital, which are already having a horrible time because they're at the hospital, and now they have this threat looming over them. So I don't know, I enjoyed him in the story.
Okay, right on. One thing I do want to talk about before I kind of move on, before I start to conclude with some less movie specific facts, there's a sequence in this movie in the hospital. It's this famous one-shot sequence that lasts for 2 minutes and 43 seconds. I remember pointing it out to you and being like, oh, it's the one-shot sequence, and you were like,
yeah, I was unimpressed.
You were unimpressed. Okay. Bear in mind, this is a 2 minute 43 second one-shot clip in 1992, okay? We've had one-shots in things lately. We've had movies that are entirely built to look like a one-shot, like 1917. But in 1992, this was a very impressive thing to do.
Okay, but question. Because there are 2 particular movies that you've assigned me that have had like one-shots that I feel like they came out around the same time, right? So like there was the Old Boys.
Old Boy
Had one. Has
yeah.
one. That's 90s, right? That was a 90s.
That was 2003.
2003. Okay. Well, I feel like that one shot was way more impressive. And then the oh my gosh, the movie we watched, it was the Thailand movie, right? The martial arts.
The Raid Redemption.
Didn't that have
That didn't have any one shots in it.
It wasn't when they were in that the whole movie they were in the building.
Right.
Okay, I thought there was a part where there was a one shot.
The Raid Redemption doesn't really have any oneers. But Hard Boiled sure does.
Well,
so
still.
Okay, I hear your point about Old Boy's oneer being like pretty cool, because that one all takes place like in a hallway, and you're running. The camera is moving parallel to. Like, it's moving left and right to follow the character's progression down this hallway. Yeah. And that's a really, really cool shot. Like, that's one of the coolest shots I think I've ever seen. Yeah. And it's like, it's a really long, and it's just him beating the crap out of a ton of guys with a hammer.
Yeah. And so then, like, you showed me this one, and I was just like, okay.
Okay, so... all right, so I'm going to give you some facts on the oneer that might help you appreciate it. But like, okay, so like the Old Boy one, yes, it was later. It was 2003. So a bit more resources, a bit more technology, but
not that much more.
But also the one in Old Boy, it's like all he had to do was just fight these guys. They could have improvised the whole thing, and the camera just had to follow them. You know, it was really impressive. They probably knew like the core essence of what they had to accomplish. Yeah. But they probably just improvised that whole thing. What's impressive about the oneer in Hard Boiled is that the whole thing was planned in like a day and a half before they filmed it, and they did it. due to scheduling, they only had one chance to perform the one continuous take. It was like, we've only got one shot at doing this, and it's a one shot. And there's so much choreography that went into it, because it's like all of these practical effects have to happen in sync with each other in order for this to work. You know, like people have to like fly through windows and like.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing about a one shot, is you have to be on your marks, you know?
Right. But they planned this over the course of like a day. Mm-hmm. And then they filmed it. They were like, all right, guys, we've got a day to come up with a really cool oneer. And then they did it. But what's especially cool about it is that halfway through the take, the characters, they get into an elevator to go up to another floor. And then, you know, they continue the shot. But in reality, what happens is they take out a whole bunch of guys in this room. They go into the elevator. And then they have like a full-on conversation in that elevator. Like they're acting still. There's dialogue happening in this oneer. And then what was happening in that 20 seconds while they were in the elevator was that like they just went into one room, and then the entire crew had 20 seconds to clean up the room they were just in and refurbish it to look like a new room, and then continue the shot, which is just totally crazy.
Was Mr. and Mrs. Smith inspired by that scene?
I'm sure.
Because, you know, at the end of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they're at that warehouse and they're like shooting and all this stuff. And then they go into the elevator, they go up a floor, and then they continue to shoot more. And then they go into a room.
It probably, yeah.
And then like go back out and do that whole, you know, choreographed, you know.
Yes, it probably was. I would say a lot of the action movies that we take for granted today, like, I don't think that we would have John Wick if Hard Boiled hadn't happened when it happened.
Yeah.
Like, just so many films have taken influence from this movie in particular. I will say on the oneer, it's actually not one shot. It is two shots spliced together.
Wow, so you really just lied to me.
I know. I didn't know that it was two shots spliced together. This whole time I thought it was one shot spliced together, but now I thought it was just filmed in one go, but now I know a bit more about how to film a oneer. And when we were watching the movie, I noticed it. I was like, oh, that guy just wiped across the screen. Like that's two shots. But it doesn't diminish how impressive it is that much, because it's still like they still had to do the 20 seconds of refurbishing everything. They still had to get that drama in there. And it all just kind of came down to the money running low. Like that's why it had to be spliced into two shots. And I read like officially, like, yes, that is actually two shots, but they did set it up in a day and a half, and it was all filmed handheld, which is another insane thing to do. So where did I even find this movie? That's the question. So this movie to me is notable because I discovered it around 2007 when a video game sequel to this movie came out called Stranglehold for the Xbox 360. And it was a game where you played through a series of levels. You played as Tequila. You were Chow Yun-Fat. It was fully voice acted, and it took place years later. And I remember thinking of how fun and innovative its mechanics felt at the time. I didn't know anything about this game, but I downloaded the demo on the Xbox 360 Marketplace, and I played that demo about 1 million times in anticipation for the game to come out. And then it finally came out, and I played the crap out of it. And it was just really fun and innovative, and all of the mechanics felt really good. You could run along small railings like Tequila did in the movie. You could leap and trigger slow-mo to shoot your enemies. You could leap and slide along carts like they did in the movie. You had ways to kill enemies by shooting something in the environment that would then fall on your enemies. It was pretty next level at the time. And there were collectible birds, like the tea house sequence with all the birds.
Bring your own bird. I'm gonna create a tea shop, and it's gonna be bring your own bird.
Bring your birds. Yeah, I don't know anything about why that tea shop like
had a bunch of birds.
Yeah, but as you played Stranglehold, occasionally you would just find bird cages, and those were like collectibles throughout the game, and origami cranes as well. It was awesome. And I didn't know anything about a movie when I was playing that game till after I beat the game. And then I asked my mom to order Hard Boiled on DVD on Netflix in the mail. And I watched it like 2 times in one night because I was like, this is the coolest movie I've ever seen. I thought it was the greatest action film I had ever watched. And I was 14 years old. And then when I took a digital arts media program in 11th and 12th grade, I remember one of the friends I made in my film class, he was also a big fan of this movie. And he was the one that gave me all the trivia on how they filmed The Oner. And it was like my original appreciation for this movie that made when like The Raid came out when I was like 18 so exciting. So yeah, it's just a great movie. And some final facts. This movie is ranked number 18 in Entertainment Weekly's top 50 cult films of all time list.
Very credible source.
Yes. 2 more facts. So in the film, there's a scene. This is kind of a weird random fact. I don't need to bring this up. It's not weird. I shouldn't say that, but it's just something I didn't know, and I think it's pretty interesting. So in the film, at one point, Tequila, he's at the police station, and he goes up to a shrine and he does a prayer at the shrine. And apparently, I didn't know this, every police station in Hong Kong has a shrine dedicated to Guan Yu, who is the Taoist god of war, who was supposedly a real-life military general turned emperor in the Eastern Han dynasty that was later deified in the Sui dynasty. And he's considered a guardian deity that represents bravery, righteousness, leadership, protection, and triumph. So law enforcement agencies in Hong Kong worship him in hopes that his blessings will protect them in their line of work.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Last fact is that the movie is called Hard Boiled because Tequila is supposed to be this like true grit, all guts, no glory super cop. And critics were critiquing John Woo's films as glorifying gangsters, and he said, fine, I will glorify the police instead. And
the opposite.
Right. And his character, Tequila, is supposed to be based on Dirty Harry, which is that is a Clint Eastwood character. Mm. And he's like a combination of Dirty Harry and Frank Bullitt from a movie called Bullitt. But both of those characters are inspired by the real-life San Francisco PD homicide detective Dave Tashi, who was the lead investigator in the Zodiac case, who Mark Ruffalo plays in the movie Zodiac. Wow. So, Mark Ruffalo and then Chow Yun-fat in this movie. You see the connection? I sure don't.
Oh but gosh. I've never seen Zodiac.
I just thought that was really interesting. Yeah, we should watch Zodiac sometimes. That was a great movie. Anyway, clearly I have a lot of love for this film. Actually, I do have some numbers written down that I do want to tell you. So, body count in this movie. What would you estimate the body count is?
I don't know. Probably high because everyone died. From what I saw. So
the body count is 307, which is
ridiculous.
An insane number because it's not happening from like, a big explosion killed a bunch of people. It's like, no, each of those people probably got shot. Yeah, which is crazy. Budget, $4 million, which is super low. Bullets, they fired off about 100,000 blank rounds, which meant all of the guns were actually real guns that were firing blanks, and they used about 200 guns. But notably, like, it was really hard for them to get the guns into Hong Kong. They had to like have them sent from London, and the Hong Kong police had to like inspect every single gun. It was a whole ordeal because they're pretty hardcore out there.
Why are you ordering that many guns?
Yeah, it was.
And what are you gonna do with them after?
Right, it's like this movie about gun smuggling, and it's like.
They had to smuggle guns to make the movie.
Yeah. It took them 123 days to film the movie. Notably, the hospital sequence itself took 40 days to film. And the body count of the movie, I know I said it was 307 total. Well, for the hospital alone, the body count was 230. So, just some numbers there for you. Anyway, yeah.
Too much.
It's a great movie. Definitely viewing it now, it's like, whew, that's a lot of violence. A lot of gun violence specifically. But I gotta appreciate the stunt work. It's just so, I didn't know that they just kind of winged it. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is like the coolest thing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Wow.
Thanks for listening to me go on and on and on about one of my favorite movies.
Well, I love to hear you so passionate.
Oh, thanks.
All right, let's do assignments.
Sounds good.
You go first.
All right. Well, you were going to give me an animated movie last week. If you didn't give me Mid90s. So we decided last week that we were going to give each other some animated movies. Mm-hmm. So my animated movie, I can't really say, I'm not sure how much you're going to enjoy it.
Oh, God.
But I think it's an important cultural artifact and that I think you will enjoy getting some amount of education on. So the movie is Digimon the movie.
No, don't make me.
It flies by. It's a really quick movie. You know all about Pokemon, but do you know anything about Digimon? Well, it's time to get your crash course.
I don't want to. Okay, fine. All right. I had a. Did you hear that noise that came out of my mouth?
Yeah, you made a sound.
I don't know how that happened.
Is there somebody screaming inside?
Literally,
of your
it
mouth?
heard Digimon and was like. I was stuck between two movies to give you this week, and I was trying to use yours assignment to
between two different animated films.
Yes, because I had one that I was gonna do last week, but then I was like, well, I should take advantage of the fact we're doing animated and give something I've been wanting to give you for a while.
Gotcha.
But is yours 2D animation?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stick with the 2D animation, and I'm gonna give you what I was gonna give you last week, which was the Proud Family movie.
Oh, okay. This is perfect because this is a perfect pairing. Mm-hmm. These are two things that we watched when we were kids that were shows, and now they're movies.
Yeah.
And they were both made probably around the same time.
I don't know. Early 2000s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, from two totally different target markets.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. No, that's perfect.
Exciting. This
yeah, well, thank God we didn't do the Proud Family movie and Hard Boiled. That would have been an absolutely insane mashup.
That's so funny.
Oh, God. All right, cool. So then that means next week will be Digimon the movie and the Proud Family movie.
Yes.
Hope you look forward to that. We will catch up with you then. Stay safe out there in the world and have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.